What is going on, Cigar Club family? Welcome to another episode from the TPE trade show floor right here on the Cigar Club Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Imber, and joining me today, I'm honored to have Luciano right here in the building with us from Ace Prime, right? I'm always like, is Pichardo Ace Prime?
Ace Prime Crown Heads, one family.
Ace Prime Crown Heads. It's one family, and we were just geeking about different tobacco information and going down this deep rabbit hole on processing, and I was like, we got to time out and bring this to the podcast because it's some incredible information. So thanks for making some time to hang out with us.
Pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah,
pleasure to be with you.
We've been shipping, like I said earlier, we've been shipping so many cigars, whether it's from Crown Heads or Pichardo, even Ace Prime stuff like Tiago Splitter and all these cigars that everybody listening or watching, they've just really enjoyed them. There's something different. There's something unique about your tobacco and your process of making them, and I just want to know a little more about it. So if you could tell people a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we can get into some like cool geeky questions.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. So we, Pichardo and I started this company about 13 years ago. We come from a different direction than most of the brands. Usually you launch the brand and then you go into manufacturing and then growing tobacco. Right. So we actually start growing tobacco and then went to the manufacturing and then develop our brand. So it's kind of the opposite path. We've been making cigars for a lot of people for a long time until when we decided to really launch our own brands a few years ago. And then we got into this partnership with Crown Heads. It's been extremely successful. We focus our production at the factory. We are vertical, so we go on tobacco. We make our own tobacco, and now we distribute together with Crown Heads. And since we started this partnership, it's been an amazing journey, you know?
Yeah, it seems like maybe not a lot of people that smoke a lot of boutique cigars or were Crown Heads fans or all these other many incredible cigar brands knew that much about you or about the factory, about the way you guys do things. And now it's like a spotlight has been turned on and people get to hear so much about it. And what are you smoking right now, just so we can let people...
I'm smoking the Mil Diaz.
Is that the Edmundo size?
It's just the Edmundo size.
I love that size.
We're really proud of manufacturing the cigar. It's something we started a few years ago. Yep. That's why a lot of people think it's Mil Diaz means 1,000 days, right? Yep. They think that it took us 1,000 days to produce it. That's not accurate. So it just kind of somehow celebrates an encounter of John Huber, myself, and my partner. This is the first blend that we worked together, and then we decided to just launch this 1,000 days later. That's why it's called 1,000 days Mil Diaz.
And when we were talking about that blend, because to me it stands out in the Crown Heads portfolio of brands, when we smoked that, I was like, wow, this is different than anything Crown Heads has ever made before. And for me, it like hit my palate like beautifully. Like I love the whole smoking experience of that cigar. And you had mentioned when you were blending it and when you made it, you were saying it's a disruptive cigar. Yeah. What does that mean and why is it so disruptive?
So I call it disruptive because, to be quite frank, when we start blending this cigar, my thoughts were this will be a total failure, or it's going
to be
all
great projects start,
or it's going to be a huge success. Yeah. And because when you smoke the Mil Diaz, and I don't say this to be pretentious or anything, it's just the reality. There's nothing for you to compare with. Yeah. That's why when people start reviewing the cigars, when we first launched, they're all over the place. Yeah. Some people would smoke and say, "Oh, this is actually a medium full cigar." People say, "No, it's just too mild." So we play a lot with the levels of acidity in the cigar. So we balance the acidity, we balance the salivation.
And how do you balance acidity in a cigar?
A lot of people don't talk about this, but I love to talk about the minerality of each one of the leaves. So we are very lucky that we have so many different soils in Nicaragua, right? Yeah. So if you we were just talking about Ometepe, right? Yeah. So if you get a leaf from Ometepe, there's so much sulfur in that tobacco, which is a completely different soil than Jalapa, for example. That's more sandy and have way more magnesium, and so which causes that sweet sensation in your palate. So when you mix some of these leaves, you can create completely different reactions, right? Right. So the Mil Diaz is I would say it was designed to give an experience of a medium level acidity, which allows, when we react to the pH of our saliva, it allows you to understand some subtle notes that you wouldn't understand if it wasn't for that reaction, if it wasn't for that combination.
So it works as like a palate cleanser while you're smoking the cigar to open you up to taste more.
Yes. Well, that is actually something we really achieved with our next launch, which I don't know if we can disclose this yet.
Okay.
But we have another, I would call disruptive taste profile coming.
Yep.
It's in a pipeline. It's already produced. It's aging right now. Will be launched in a couple months. And there's another disruptive cigar. So I hope people will enjoy it, because it's definitely it's been an adventure to blend that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wrapper on Mil Diaz is what is it?
It's a Corojo. It's an Habano that we produce in Ecuador. So we grow these wrappers in Ecuador.
And I always hear this from people that use a lot of Ecuadorian grown wrappers. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure you have a really great scientific, and I can just take it as word finally and know what it means. But Ecuador is known because of its cloud coverage, right? As to why wrapper grows really well there. Is that true? And why does that help wrapper leaf be like better than it grown in Esteli or in Jalapa or where, all other places where you can still grow it? What's the benefit of Ecuador?
So we need to go back then and talk a little about the construction of a cigar, right? So we have 4 functions basically in the tobacco leaf. Mm-hmm. So one of them is beauty, right? Which is the wrapper. So how you can achieve a good quality wrapper that's not too stained, it has the proper oils and the proper density, it has resistance, and then you have the binder who holds everything together, right? Then you have leaves that are responsible for combustion, which is seco. We have leaves that are responsible for flavor, which is usually you play with the binder if you want the binder to be more present in the blend. So you're going to use Viso binder that's a little thicker.
Oh, interesting.
But they are processed differently too.
Right.
So because they're processed different, they taste different than a filler. Then you have the Ligier, you have the Viso, which both are responsible for flavor and strength. Viso, a little more flavor. Ligier, more strength. So you have these 4 functions in a leaf, right? And we're talking about the wrappers, the beauty of the cigar. So in Esteli, because of its soil, or in Jalapa, well, actually there are some good wrappers coming out of Jalapa, but they have such a good minerality that the flavor, it's very predominant.
Yep.
And sometimes you don't want that much of a flavor in a wrapper. What you want is subtleness. What you want is the wrapper to look good. You want the cigar to be beautiful. Right? And you can achieve that amazingly by growing in Ecuador because of the climate that you just mentioned.
And you let the filler tobacco, the binder, do the talking with the flavor. Exactly.
Like, what's the difference of a shade-grown wrapper into a sun-grown Ecuadorian wrapper? Right? I think that's a very good question. The shade-grown, you're going to have a similar result because the less light you have, the more the leaves will expand to catch that light. Okay. So you have thinner leaves and less veins because the leaves are trying to grow to capture more the light and to have the photosynthesis. Okay. Now, with the sun-grown, you ended up having almost the same result, but with a little more thickness and resistance. Have you ever smoked a cigar that you cut it and it immediately breaks?
Sure. Yeah.
It's because the density of the leaf, it doesn't have the matter that's necessary to really, keep that beauty.
Right.
So, and that's basically the difference. Like in Ecuador, it's proven to be, the best wrappers in the world. You can try to replicate that in a shade-grown environment. You're not going to get the same result in flavor. You're not going to get the same result in minerality, in resistance, even in look.
Right.
So I would say that's the difference.
No, yeah, that's great. I feel like I understand it more now too, and why that happens. And something that you focus on, obviously, if you guys can't already tell, is a lot of the science and the why, the reaction to flavor profiles, the reaction to why the leaf is colored a certain way or how it meshes together. That's like a big focus, which I think is just awesome to be able to know how much is going into these cigars that we're smoking is more than just like, grab these, we need, 2 leaves of Viso, 1 Ligero, 1 Seco, put a binder on it, get it out the door. It's like this thought process of a lot of time, I'm sure, of learning and making really bad cigars and making really good cigars and seeing what works and what doesn't. On our podcast maybe 2 months ago, one of our first ones, we were smoking the Pichardo Familiar Reserva. I always mess that up. Yep.
That's right.
And we were on your Instagram page, and I saw something about anaerobic processing. And I just saw like a bag around a bunch of bundles of cigars, and it was like all steamy, like a little sauna for the cigars. But I also remember smoking that and knowing it had a lot of high priming tobacco in it, but not being like blown out of my seat by it. It was rich, it was nuanced, there was still like flavor, it wasn't all strength. Can you talk a little bit about what heck anaerobic, am I saying it right? Anaerobic processing is with cigars?
I love to answer this question, man, because this is something that we didn't invent. So this was created by Arsenio. Arsenio, he was a biologist. He was such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to fermentation of tobacco, right? So he created this after-rolled processing of fermentation that we decided to adopt into the Pichardo line, and it's been working tremendously. So you can smoke a cigar that has a lot of nicotine, it has a lot of flavor, and as we talked before, flavor is built out of the Viso and the Ligero, but it's not a punch in your face. Why? Because of that process. So after we roll the cigars goes in plastic bags. Those plastic bags, you're basically reducing the amount of oxygen that is interacting with the cigar after roll. And in any living matter, there's always a balance between yeast and bacteria, right? Okay. It's a weird conversation, but for the cigar geeks, they'll love this, right? So there's always this fight between yeast and bacteria. Just as in wine, you want the yeasts to take over. Okay. This wouldn't work in our own bodies, for example, because we do have yeast and bacteria in our bodies. I don't know if you notice when you have to do an antibiotic treatment for a strep throat or anything, you notice that you're going to sometimes eventually have skin rash, or your stomach becomes a little upset. It's because you're killing all the good bacteria and the yeasts are taking over. Okay. So you start having yeast infections.
So it doesn't work with us.
Doesn't work with us.
Cigars
but for the cigars, you don't want any bacteria in the cigar. You want actually the yeast to take over, and you want the yeast that actually doesn't require too much oxygen to predominate in that process. That's what that process does. Those 3 months in those plastic bags just make those yeasts that don't use much of oxygen to help release some of the gases, including ammonia, but but some of the other gases that help the matter physically blend, not just the flavor. If you cut open, which we could have.
Oh yeah, we did. We were going to, but
if you cut open that cigar, you compare to a cigar that doesn't go through the same process, you notice the difference.
Wow.
You can almost not pull the leaves apart; they become one single matter. And why that helps? That helps because when you have the inner exchange of flavors, it's almost like the fermentation speeds up to a level where there's absolutely no harshness or no spiciness, but you still have the flavor there. You still have that nicotine present. Right. So you can build very strong blends, even for the mild smoker. And retailers, they will kill me for this, but I would go to cigar events sometimes, man, and I'm inside their humidor, and their clients walk in, and they want me to interact with their clients, and they say, "Hey, I like a mild cigar. What would you give to me?" And I hand my strongest cigar. And the retailer, he wants to kill me.
Right. This guy's never coming back.
But I want to expand his horizon. So, he'll try different things, he'll consume more. Right? So when I present that blend to the mild smoker, he feels that kind of explosion of flavor.
Oh, man.
It's not harsh, it's not underfermented, so he's not getting all those negative, persistent, tobacco in their mouth that he brushes his teeth and next morning he still tastes the tobacco.
It's clean. So it's still clean.
It's clean and it has that flavor. You feel the flavor and then it goes away. You feel the flavor, it goes away. And that's what you want in the experience any smoke, any cigar.
No, totally. And we were talking about it before, but with how we ship out cigars, we cater to everybody's palates, but we always throw in cigars that push their palate, that make them think differently, because maybe they wouldn't grab that cigar because of how the wrapper looks, and they would be like, no, that's not for me. They grab the Connecticut. But it's like, you're not missing out on the strength and sick feeling. You're missing out on flavor, like big, bold body and a journey through a cigar, which there's nothing wrong with mild cigars. But when it comes to wanting to experience more and taste new tobaccos, when you have somebody processing it correctly or in a way that isn't all about just strength,
I would hate, for example, I love wine, right? So I would hate to have to drink just one type of wine.
Right.
You know, let's say I'm having a nice fish, shrimp, lobster, whatever, and then someone brings me a heavy Cabernet to drink with.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I only drink cabs. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. So that's why it's very important for your consumer to really try different taste profiles. It's going to open their minds. They will understand that there are very good flavorful cigars.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily are mild, but also they're not overwhelming. It's not going to make you sick or anything, you know. It's well processed tobacco. It's tobacco that's been aged for a long time. So that's what we try to achieve with this anaerobic process, and it worked, you know.
Yeah, totally.
It's a big risk for us because try to imagine we have to produce all the cigars without having any POs, any orders, and sit in that tobacco. So it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment into inventory just to keep those cigars aging for over 18 months, even before we ship them.
They sit for 18 months post-roll in the bags, or only as
3 months in the bags, and then 15 months out of the bags in aging room.
What?
So I don't believe there's any company that does that.
Which just for like to fully understand that, I don't know if this is a correct claim, but I would say like the average cigar sits for about 3 months before
Usually,
they would claim it's ready to be smoked to
be
public.
To be fair here, of course we have this process for this specific line. We use more heavy tobaccos, but you don't have to actually wait for a year, you know, to smoke a very good cigar. But the 3 months is very important for humidity equalization. So remember, when you're making a cigar, the wrapper is coming with almost 100% of humidity.
Right.
That's how you manipulate the
Super
wrapping
moist
process.
and
very moist.
malleable, or
The binder comes in 70%.
Okay.
And has a different fermentation process. So you can squeeze the binder, it will never break, right? Because you have that's how it's supposed to be at least.
Right.
Then you have the fillers.
Because if it did break, you couldn't roll the cigars. They'd be breaking them all the time.
They'll be breaking them all the time.
Everything has to be wet. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then you have the fillers who come sometimes at 30%, 20% of humidity. So now you have two different types of humidity in the same cigar. If you smoke right away, it's going to burn funky, you know?
Right.
So you're going to notice that the wrapper, it's going to burn a little weird. So we need time for this humidity to become even.
Right.
You know, that's why it has to sit in a humidor. So the wrapper also adhere a little bit to the binder, and gives it time to have the right humidification in the cigar.
Wow. And you thought it was just rolled up dried leaves, people. Well, I did for the longest time. I remember even down to the first time I started learning that there's like different seed varietals. There's Corojo 99, Habano 2000, Criollo 98, and how even just that impacts flavor so drastically. And then where you put it. Jalapa, Esteli, Matepe, Honduras.
And for how long you fermented the pilones too. So this cigar that we launch in 2 months from now, I think you and I talked about, offline. We're using the same filler, but we have different aging process in that same filler. Like we grow a lot of tobacco in Pueblo Nuevo. So we noticed that by aging, like for 18 months, we get a certain result of taste profile. By aging a little bit more, you get a different result. So the Ligero aging a little more, the Viso a little less, to create that kind of very unique experience that I call disruptive experience.
Well, that's so cool. That it's again more than just, instead of a half leaf, do a quarter leaf. It's like, no, let's totally ferment this half leaf that we're putting in here of Viso. Totally different than the one we're doing a full leaf on, and it's the same priming, same everything, but it's going to come out.
You want to get deeper?
Tasting so different. Go for it.
And now you have the cold fermentation and the hot fermentation. That's how Cubans separate both. The wrappers, you do the cold fermentation. 90 degrees, we flip the pilones.
Okay.
Right? So usually fillers, 125 degrees, we flip the pilones.
Yes.
So we decided to do cold fermentation in some of our fillers as well. So it takes longer to ferment, but it's a completely different result.
What is the generally speaking, is there like a key like noticeable difference that like it is you're getting more body or it has less nicotine, or what's like the core difference when you ferment filler tobacco at a lower temperature?
Okay.
Can you say it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So here's the thing about yeasts, right?
Yeah.
So the yeasts actually accumulate matter in reaction with the oxygen and the actual matter. So if you put a leaf and you do the cold fermentation and you measure the diameter of that leaf, if you look 3 months after, there'll be more matter, which is not water.
What?
So the yeasts actually, they
growing,
grow.
Expanding.
I know it sounds nasty, but if you look at if you leave any food out of the refrigerator for a long period of time, you're going to notice that some matter grows. And now you have the fungus and all this
but
different
yeast is good
components.
with a cigar.
It's very, very
so
good.
the fact that it's growing,
This is good in everything.
Yeah.
That's how we make bread.
We love bread, don't we?
That's how we make most of our food. We need the yeast. All that balance is very important.
Oh, that is so
So in
cool.
the cold fermentation, you're gonna end up getting thicker tobaccos.
Unreal.
When in the warm fermentation or the hot fermentation, if you flip the pilones every 120 degrees, the matter will usually stay the same.
Wow.
Same diameter. Of course, another thing too, the less yeast reactions you have, the more water you need to keep that tobacco moisture and the fermentation to continue. Because fermentation is water and air. There's nothing else. We don't put any additives to ferment the tobacco.
Sure.
But if you do the cold fermentation, you're going to need less water.
Which means less time too, that it has to...
Actually, longer time.
Once it's rolled, it takes
because the temperature, it's so low that you have to actually keep a little longer for all the ammonia to be released, for all the flavors to...
Oh, I would have thought the opposite. Okay, that makes sense. Wow. Chemistry in cigars.
It's chemistry, biology, geology. It's everything.
Fascinating. What I always love to know this. First of all, thank you for sharing all of that info.
My pleasure.
I feel like a kid in a candy shop learning all of this. What from a broader sense in cigars or in tobacco, it seems to me, at least from where I sit, there's this new wave or a rebirth, if you will, maybe, or a new boom. But there's these boutique brands coming in and smaller brands that you'd never heard of before. But what a lot of them are doing are opening the doors or bringing more transparency and sharing more. And it's not just, you don't get to know how this is made. You just know that you go to the store, you pay $10 for it, you pay $15 for it, and that's what you get. But you don't get to know what we know.
No.
Even the past 20 minutes sitting here, there's things that I'm sure, because for me it is, a lot of people listening had never heard of before in their life. I'm trying to figure out where my question is going to come from. But is that something that you're putting a focus on, like sharing that info? And two, where do you see the benefits of sharing all that with cigar smokers for years to come? Like, what does that mean to you to be able to share?
Dude, for me, you're asking the best questions ever, because I believe in transparency. I think it's not politically correct what I'm going to say now, but I believe this industry is full of bullshit. And I think that times are different. You know, maybe I'm too philosophical now, but I believe that people just don't believe in anything anymore. Because there's so many lies out there. So people don't believe in government. People don't believe in religious leaders. People don't believe each other as they used to. So sometimes I know for a fact that the future really belongs to whoever will become legit right now. You know, just look at the wine, for example. So the wine is still growing in consumption every single year. But if you look at the 80s, the wine consumption was not even a third of what it is right now. And why people drink a lot of wine now? They drink a lot of wine now because people love to brag about the wineries and the grapes are in the wine, the vintage of the So people have knowledge about wine. And the more knowledge people have, the more inclined they will be to consume a product that they know.
The power of education in consumer goods.
So I believe that in the cigars today, whoever brings information and truthful information and disclose the processes and show to the consumer what they're doing, they will be extremely successful. Because it's not just with cigars. I think it's our society today. People are craving truth.
Yes.
That's
legitimacy, truth. And like you said, this like smoke and mirrors or fancy games like that you're playing around. What at the end of the day it's a cigar. Like we're in here today with hundreds of people who make cigars. But I agree, like the difference, and it's something that we've put such a focus on, is how do we tell more information than that's ever been told before, and share people too that this is your life, this is your passion, this is what you do. I
think that there was a time where people will grab, I don't know, maybe a bottle of wine or a cigar, and they'll say, why are you smoking this? I'm smoking this because I'm not going to mention names because this guy makes it, right?
Or I like the band.
So the whole like code of personality, or just because the family tradition or whatever, I don't believe this is the future, honestly. I think it's about the truth. It's about the reality. Listen, this is a good product. This is for how long it's been aging. You know? So people...
This is the varietal they use in this. This is what they do differently. Like, that's why I smoke this.
We open the doors of our factory to the press. We show what we're doing. We take them to the fields. we open to the consumers sometimes. I have a lot of friends who comes and visit our factory.
Yep.
Our sales team now are planning their annual meeting at the factory to just, see the fields, see the tobacco processing facilities and check out our factory. I think the more we do this, even like live shows.
Yep.
I have, can I plug something?
Yeah, please, everything.
I'll be at Cigar Group on the 20th now.
Oh, cool.
And then we have another show, I forgot, on the 22nd. And I'll be down in Nicaragua.
Yep.
And, I love the fact that I'm there. And the background is the tables and or the office where we blend. And so people can see it. People can experience somehow,
No, absolutely. That's everything you just said is how I ended up in cigars. I had no business being in cigars. My dad's not in, he smokes cigars every once in a while, but I was just wanted to know more and more. And one day I was on a trip and I walked into a small little cigar shop and factory, and the owner of the shop could tell I had all these questions and I wanted to know everything because I was really into seed varietals and all this stuff. And he sat me down and for 4 hours, try this, smoke this, rolling meat puritos, smoke this, try this. And it was like a light switch went on. I was like, oh, I'm so in love with this process. And it's just amazing how when you can share that, when you can educate people, how much more they want to smoke that cigar, smoke cigars in general, share it with friends and tell them a lot about it, because it takes it from just a thing that, one class of people can smoke in a cigar lounge, and it takes it to a story and its agriculture and its people and its places. And it's what I love so much about working in coffee. And I watched the coffee community start to share processing methods and watch that boom happen with specialty coffee. And I feel that's happening with cigars as well. So I fully agree with you when everything you said, because it's how I feel about cigars, or the industry, if you will, in general.
Absolutely, man. Everything from the seed to the product. Also, bringing up another topic that's for us is extremely important is the people. Okay, so I believe that the people are extremely important in this process. From our rollers to the bunchers, to the guys who are working in the fields. So people wants to know what kind of labor is involved too.
Yes.
It's very unfortunate to see that some people are not willing to disclose that. So we like to disclose actually, how we treat our employees and how's the dynamics of our company as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget the first time I was in Esteli and I watched them sort wrapper leaf and sign their name on each bundle of wrapper leaf. And but it's just this level of pride that these people, at the factories are taking in it, because they're what they do, it's their livelihood. And so I love that. I love that you you share all that information and everything that you're doing.
That's something I learned actually living in Esteli for a while. We had this employee. I don't share this story much. I shared only once. Her name was Anna. She passed, but she was our oldest employee. She was 60-something years old at the time. And I always pay very close attention to her because she was somehow slow, but her work was perfect. Everything she did was perfect. And her entire family was working at the factory. Her daughter, her son-in-law, another son-in-law, so about 4 of them. But I noticed that she was tired. I could see that she was working this business for, her entire life, 40 years, whatever. So one day I talked to Pichard and I said, man, I think we should just kind of let Anna stay at home, and we'll pay her salary and she'll take a break. She'll take a break. She'll, her family still works here and she'll have more time to spend with her grandson. Pichardo told me, he said, don't ever tell Anna this. She's going to be really upset with you. I didn't believe him. So 6 months later, I arrived at the factory and she came to greet me, and she stood up and reached out to my hand. I gave my hand. When I touched her hand, it was so weak. Her elbows could not even move, It's heartbreaking. And I look at her and you should stay home. You've been giving so much of your life to us. Just stay home. We'll take care of you. And then as soon as I said that, she started crying. And she said, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. It's a lot of pride.
No, I can feel it. I appreciate this.
You know, it's a lot of pride, and she taught me a lesson. I was just like athletes, you know.
Yeah.
So I have a partner who is a NBA player, and he was telling me, like, you know, he had 2 replacements.
Yep.
He said there's not one single, you know, sports athlete who doesn't go to some type of injury, or at the end of their careers, they sometimes, you know, are lucky if they can walk. So what makes someone
go to that point,
commit to that level and go to that point? It's passion. It's their life. So we always compromise something, you know. I know if I eat a lot of sweet, I have diabetes. You know, it might harm my health, but at the same time, I'm not going to stop eating because I like it. It's part of my life. It's part of the experience. It's like cigars, you know. We have to balance everything. But for her, it was her pride. It was her legacy, you know. And we are proud to say that she worked with us until maybe 3 days before she passed.
And that's how she wanted it, too.
That's how she wanted it.
That was her life. That was her passion.
So that's why we do value, you know, our people. We value what we do. I'm passionate about what I do. You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
My
Seriously.
pleasure. Yeah. I'm sorry about
No, that's okay. I can feel the passion, and
edit that stuff, please.
But wow, no, that to hear all of that, and then to come back to that, the heart really of everything, even beyond the processing and the tobacco, like the people that it affects every day. Is a beautiful thing. So thank you. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
We appreciate you. All right, Cigar Club family. Thank you for listening. That's another great, amazing episode here on the Cigar Club Podcast. I'm Dave with CigarClub.com. We'll see you soon. Happy smoking.